Okay. So, we're up to Daf Samach Gimel Amid Aleph. We're up to the Mishnah. Now today's Mishnayos deal with there are five optional minchas that a person can bring. 5 different types. So the first 2 that we're going to talk about is machvas and marcheshes. And we have to figure out what is the difference between these 2. So says the Mishnah, Ha'omer harei alai b'machvas. If a person says, I'm going to bring in a machvas, which means a mincha in a machvas, lo yavi b'marcheshes. You're not allowed to bring a marcheshes mincha. You have to bring a machvas mincha, and vice versa. B'marcheshes lo yavi b'machvas. Now, what is a machvas and what is a marcheshes? What's the major difference between these 2? So, ma bein machvas lemarcheshes. So, Rabbi Yossi Aglili has an interesting shita. He says, marcheshes yesh lekisoy. A marcheshes has a cover, and machvas ein lekisoy. And a machvas does not have a cover. So the difference between machvas and marcheshes is whether the pot that it was cooked in had a cover or not. That's the shita of Rabbi Yossi Aglili. I think more people are familiar with the second shita, which is Chanina ben Gamliel Omer, marcheshes amuka u'maiseha roichshin. A marcheshes is a deep pan, and it makes like a cake. The oil sort of settles in the pan, and it's more cakey. And machvas is tzafa u'maser kashin. Machvas is a thinner pan, and it's more of a griddle. It gets harder, more like a crispier. So according to Rav Yossi, it's merely cover or no cover. According to Chanina ben Gamliel, it's the size of the pan, frying pan as opposed to a pot, basically. Okay. So says the Gemara, where did Rav Yossi Haglili get it from that the difference between a machvas and a marcheshes is a cover? And how did he know then a machvas that a marcheshes has a cover and a machvas? Guys, do you mind? I'm sorry. And how did he know?
These are 2 different types of carbon minchas.
Correct. These are optional minchas, but he's saying the difference between a machvas and a marcheshes is a cover or not.
Why would you do one or the other?
Do whatever you want. I don't know. Dealer's choice. For whatever reason, you wanted to bring a machvas, you wanted to bring a marcheshes. These are 2 of the 5 optional ones. But how did Rabbi Yossi Aglili know that the marcheshes has a cover and the machvas does not have a cover? So the Gemara wants to bring a pasuk. Ilema marcheshes, maybe he felt the marcheshes had a cover, is because he translates marcheshes, the shorish is archushe halev, that he believes that a marcheshes was brought really as a tikkun for bad thoughts, inappropriate thoughts. So thoughts are in the heart, and the heart is covered. So therefore the marcheshes had a cover. A machvas, kedesiv, rochash libi dvar tov. Marcheshes is from rochash libi, my heart thought. It stirred. So therefore it's for bad thoughts. So that's that, and therefore the heart is covered. And a machvas has no cover because the aisya amachbui hapeh. It's for bad speech. For bad speech, on a lashon hara or whatever it is, you want to have a tikkun for bad speech, you bring a machvas, and speech is open, it's exposed, and therefore it has no cover as well. Kedamri inshi menabeach manbuchi. As people say, it blows. Menabeach is like nevuchi, is to blow. So machvas is from that shorish. So meaning, he's saying the reason why a machvas is uncovered and marcheshes is covered is because he translated marcheshes as corresponding to the heart, to thoughts, to the lave, and that's covered, and machvas is corresponding to the mouth, which is uncovered. Here's the problem. There's 2 other psukim that is reverse. I can find the pasuk that the machvas corresponds to the heart and the marcheshes corresponds to the mouth. So it's the Gemara says, Ema ipcha, I could do the opposite. Machvas da'aisya machbui alev. I could say the opposite. I could say a machvas is for the thoughts and for the heart, which is covered. D'chsiv lama nichbeisa livroyach. Why is he running away? Nichbeisa livroyach. And running away secretly, I guess, and that's the heart is more secretive. And marchesh is da'aisya archushi. Kedamri inshi have a merachshin sifaseyin. And merachshin sifaseyin means that the lips were moving. So maybe marcheshes is for the. In other words, it can't just be taishing up psukim because it's psukim that indicate either way. So how do you know that marcheshes has a cover and machvas does not? And the answer is el gemara gemirla. It's halachah mashma sinai. He had a tradition that the marcheshes has a cover and the machvas does not. Okay. Now Rav Chanina ben Gamliel says that the marcheshes was a deeper pan, like a cake, and the machvas was a thinner pan. The Gemara says marcheshes amuka d'chsiv v'chonasa ba marcheshes, because the pasuk says it's made in the pan, which implies that the pan is very deep. And machvas sapa, but a machvas is a thinner pan. D'chsiv v'al machvas, it's on top, which implies more like on the pan as opposed to in the pan. Okay.
Are they in contradiction with the Talmud?
Yeah, it doesn't agree. According to Rabbi Yossi, they're the same size pan, just one's covered, one's uncovered. This is their different size pan. So the Gemara says like this: the shaila is Tanu Rabbanan b'shamei oimrim harei alai marcheshes yehemunach hachiavilio. If a person says, I'm donating bimarcheshes or minchas marcheshes, then there's no shaila. You have to donate the mincha. Either if you said mincha or even if you said bimarcheshes. What does it mean bimarcheshes? It means in the pan. What's in the pan? The mincha. What if you just said harei alai marcheshes? The shaila is marcheshes the name of the pan? And in which case, if you said harei alai marcheshes, you're promising to donate a pan, the actual pan itself. Or is marcheshes more, not the pan itself, it's a more description of the carbon. Meaning the carbon was called a marcheshes. So is a marcheshes really the official name of the pans or the carbon that's made in the pans? So that's the question. And if you say harei alai marcheshes, so says Beis Shammai, he's not sure, and therefore you have to wait till Eliyahu Navi comes. Why? He speaks it out. Misafkele, because it's unclear. I'al shum kli nikru. If marcheshes is the name of the kli, in which case you have to donate the kli. I'al shum ma'aseyem, or it's perhaps a name of what the functionality of the kli, meaning i.e. what's cooked in it, and therefore you have to donate a mincha. And because it's unclear what you have to donate, you have to wait for Eliyahu Navi to come. That's Beis Shammai Shittik. Beis Shammai is saying he's not sure if marcheshes is really a proper name of the pan or the thing that's made in the pan. Beis Hillel disagrees. Beis Hillel says no, it's the name of the pan. Beis Hillel oimrim kli haya b'mikdash. There was an official kli umarcheshes shma, and it was called a marcheshes. Meaning, this is not a description of a spongy cake or a thin cake. No, there was a kli called a marcheshes. V'daima min kalbus amuk, and it had deep tongs. They have a picture in the art scroll. It's like a round circular pan. Munach, and when they put the dough inside of it, it looks like certain types of apples, or like acorns of the Greek oak, I don't know, like little balls in this pan. And the pasuk says there's a machvas and a marcheshes, meaning Beis Hillel says very clear, it's the name of the kli. Therefore, if you say harei alai marcheshes, you have to donate the kli. That's Beis Hillel shita, not Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai, it's unclear whether it's a description of the kli or a description of the cake that's made inside the kli. No, it's the kli. Alma al shum hakelim nikru v'loy al shum haseyem. You see that it's a name, it's a description of the kli, and not the production of the kli. Okay, those are the first two karbanos. The other three karbanos, should we close afterwards? Should I close the door over here so that the smoke doesn't come up, or it's coming up? Not going to make a difference. Huh?
It's not going to make a difference, but you can drive.
No. All right. So the two, maybe I'll go downstairs. I'll open up one of those windows. So the two kalim, with the two minchas that we talked about is machvas and mechar. They smoke. I mean, I think they officially go outside, but they're smoking. No.
You continue.
Okay, so the first two minchas that we dealt with is the machvas and marcheshes. The other ones is called minchas mafet tanur. Minchas mafet tanur means a mincha that's baked in the oven. This can either be brought as chalas, 10 chalas, it was 10. Either 10 chalas or 10 rekikin. 10 loaves or 10 wafers. So says the Mishnah, harei alai b'tanur, if a person says he's going to bring this minchas b'tanur, lo yavi mafe kupach, he's not allowed to bake it in a kupach. It's clear from the Mishnah, and the Gemara is going to point this out, Pashas, you could actually bake this outside of the premises of the Beis HaMikdash. That's what the Shitas of Shimon is. So therefore you have to know exactly how to bake it. Or it could be it's a description in the Beis HaMikdash and they have to know how to bake it. But Pashtus, it makes a little bit more sense if you hold like Rav Shimon, as the Gemara is going to point out. According to Rav Shimon, you could actually bake it off premises. Then you have to know what to bake it in. If you don't believe like Rav Shimon, it actually has to be baked in the Harabah, on the Hazara, I guess you're telling the Kaihanim what oven preparation they need to do. So says the Mishnah, then lo yavi mafa kupach, you can't bake it in a kupach, which is a smaller type of oven. V'loy mafa ra'ofim, and you can't bake it on hot tiles. It has to be in a proper oven. Umafa yoris arbiyim, and you can't bake it in Arabian cauldrons. Again, these are large pots that basically you bake it in the pot. You can't do that. It has to be a proper tanur. Rav Yehuda Omer Ratza maybe mafa kupach. Rav Yehuda says a mafa kupach, which is a small oven, It's just instead of an oven that has a spot for 2 pots, it has a 1 pot. Okay, that's close enough, and that's fine. Let's say you're going to bring a baked mincha. So I told you that could be chalas or a kikin. Lo yavi mechza chalas and mechza or kikin. You can't split it 5 and 5. You have to do all chalas or all rekikin. Rav Shimon matir mipnei yishu karban echad. Rav Shimon says it's fine. You can do 5 and 5 because it's really 1 carbon and you can mix and match. So the Gemara speaks it out. Tan Rabbanon, Chazal teach mafet tanur, that the pasuk says a mafet tanur. V'loy mafet kupach, not baked in a kupach. V'loy mafet ra'ofim, and not baked on tiles. V'loy mafet yeris harbiyim. Okay. Then Rabbi Yehuda said you could bake it in a mafet kupach. Why? Because if Yehuda oimer tanur shnei pamim, it says tanur twice in the pasuk. Lahachsher mafet kupach. One is for a regular tanur, and one is for a kupach. Rav Shimon oimer tanur shnei pamim. Rav Shimon says, what does he do with tanur twice? Echad shetei afiyasim betanur. One is that it has to be baked in the tanur. Ve'echad shehekdishan betanur. And the second is that it becomes kaddish in the tanur. Now, meaning that he's saying that it's not, you don't have to knead it in a kli shares. You bake it in the oven, and the oven is makdishit. Now, here's the problem. Okay, that could be fine. If the oven is a kli shares in the Beis Hamikdash, then it could become kaddish in the oven. That's fair. The problem is, Rav Shimon's shita is that you could bake it off premises. So if you're telling me it becomes kaddish in the oven, how is that possible? Because then if it becomes kaddish off premises, it's already puzzle. It doesn't work. So it says the Gemara, because it's a yaitzi, right? If you magdish it off premises, then it's a problem. It doesn't work. Umi isle Rav Shimon haisvara. Does Rav Shimon hold that you could be magdish, that you're magdish in the oven? But doesn't the Mishnah say Rav Shimon oimer lo'olam havaraga loimer? Rav Shimon used to say shetei halechem velechem aponim ksheris ba'azara. You could bake them in the azara. Ksheris beis pagi, and they're also kosher in beis pagi. Beis pagi was a place. It was outside of the azara. It was on Harabais. It was outside the azara. So you see, it does not have to be in the azara. Now, if you're telling me that it's magdish, it's kaddish with the baking, it doesn't make sense. How you magdish it outside of the azara? It's already puzzle. So says the Gemara, you're right. It doesn't mean that it's. The first one is that it has to be baked in the tanur. The second is not that it's kaddish in the tanur, but you have to be magdish it l'shem tanur. When you instill within it monetary holiness, which is the first madrega, when you put it and you say, I'm doing this l'shem mincha, not kedusha saguf, you have to say l'shem minchas tanur. It's unclear why. It's unclear what the source for this is, but you have to magdish l'shem tanur. Meaning it's not enough just to say you're doing this l'shem mitzvahs of a mincha. You have to say minchas tanur. Okay. Then we had a machlokes whether you could bring it 50-50, 5 loaves. 5. So it says the Gemara, Tan Rabbanon, v'chi sakriv. Now again, this is an optional mincha. The pasuk v'chi sakriv, kishetakriv lasat davar rishus. This is an optional mincha, karban mincha, and this is karban mincha. Now, what does this mean? So Rabbi Yehuda, Menayin lo oimeh harelai minchas mafe. Shelo yavi mechza chalus and mechzer kikin. Says Rabbi Yehuda, how do I know that you can't do 5 loaves and 5 wafers? It has to be all or nothing. Tamalemer karban mincha. Karban mincha is singular. Karban echad amarti lach v'leishnayim v'shloisha karbanis. It has to be 1 karban, meaning 1 type of karban, either all wafers or all loaves, but not a combination of the 2. Amr Rav Shimon, go to the next page. Rav Shimon says, "V'chinemar karban shnei pa'amim." Haloi le'nemar karban echad. Rav Shimon says, I agree with you. It says only karban once, but I disagree with your conclusion. You're saying that because it says karban once, that means that it has to be all or nothing. Adarabba, I say it says karban once, meaning all of them are the option. There's only 1 karban, meaning everything's on the table. There's no multiple. If it said karban twice, I would say that there's a wafer karban and a loaf karban. The fact that it says karban once means either one. You want to do all loaves, all wafers. There's only one. There's 1 category. And there's 3 different permutations. It's all fine. He says, maybe, maybe. You can do whatever you want. What do? You take the wafer and the loaves, and they would bake it. Then they would break it up into flour, and then do a kmitza from that flour. So then it says, let's say you do the kmitza and it turns out you have all wafer and no, meaning You have 5 wafers, 5 loaves. You break it all apart and you do the kmitza. You don't know what's in your hand. It's all flour. It could be you really only have loaves or only have wafers. It's yaitz. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Fine.
They did the kmitza after the cooking.
So the Gemara says it was one of the more challenging things to do is to break up a baked item to the point where it's back into flour form. It's very hard. Yeah, but still, it's very, very hard.
They used to do the kmitza on the
Well, no, most minchas, the kmitza is done before it's baked, but these specifically, you bake it first and then you do the kmitza. So Rav Yossi says you cannot do a combination of the two. Rav Shimon says you could. Then the Gemara says, Rav Yossi bar Rav Yehuda's son Rav Yossi said, He says what his father said. How do I know that you cannot have 5 and 5? Tamaloymar v'chol mincha shetafa betanor v'chol anasa b'marcheshes v'al machvas l'koyna makrevos l'osiyah v'chol mincha belula b'shemen charei v'chol b'nei aron tiyah. The pasuk talks about the machvas and marcheshes. That was the previous mission, and then it talks about this one. Ma v'chol omer lamata shnei minim chalukim. Just like the machvas and marcheshes, meaning he looks at it as a comparison. Just like the machvas and the marcheshes, there's no combo. It's either a machvas or a marcheshes. So too, it's either wafers or loaves. Avkala Amar Lamaila Shnei Minim Chalukim. Rav Yehuda, Shaper Kam Rav Shimon. The truth is, Rav Yehuda, who originally said you cannot do a combination, Rav Shimon has a good taina because Rav Shimon said it says carbon once, so all of them are included. So how does Rav Shimon review the respond? Amar Loi, Kivan Dechsiv B'Shemen Kiman Dechsiv Carbon Dami. It says Shemen twice, one, and that's to separate. There's Chalas and Rekikin. You're right, it says carbon once, which implies they're all in one, arbuvia. But it says shemen twice to separate chalas and rakikin. Rav Shimon, Eloy ksiv b'shemen, and how does Rav Shimon respond? Because he looks at it as really one carbon, and all combinations are fine. Doesn't it say b'shemen twice, which sort of separates? He says no. Eloy ksiv b'shemen hava mina dafka mechza chalas and mechza rakikin. He says, no, I'll tell you what the shemen twice is. One is to tell, if it just said carbon once, as one carbon, I would think you have to do a combination of chalas and rakikin. Because if I tell you chalas are an option, rakikin are an option, and there's only one carbon, so you say, well, I guess I have to do a combination of the two. Shemen twice is to allow you to do either a combination or exclusively one without the other. Now, one last issue before we finish the parak. Rabbi Yehuda said that it's entirely, you cannot do 50-50. Rav Shimon says you could. Then Rav Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, says you cannot do 50-50. Rav Yossi bar Yehuda and his father have the exact same shita. So what's the disagreement between the two? Rav Yossi bar Yehuda hainu avua. So says the Gemara, Ike beinayu di avid. The shaila is bidi avid. You're right. Rav Yossi bar Yehuda and his son, Rav Yossi bar Yehuda and his father, Rav Yehuda, agree you cannot do a combination of the two. The machloikis is, what if you did it b'di'evet? According to Rav Yehuda, it's yoytze b'di'evet. According to Rav Yehuda, it's not. So that's the nafkamin is b'di'evet, are you yoytze? Hadran Allah kol ha-menachos. Okay. We'll start the Gemara. New parak, the 6th parak. So the Mishnah says like this. This Mishnah is talking about the carbon omer, which is brought on the 2nd day of Pesach, the first day of Chol HaMoed. And it's brought to be mater chadash. Okay. Now, what this carbon was brought, it was brought from barley, and you needed to bring 1 isaron of flour from the new barley crop. Now, the new barley crop was generally harvested the first night of Chol HaMoed. So let's say Pesach is Wednesday. The first day of Pesach is Wednesday. That means that Wednesday night, now it's officially Chol HaMoed, they go down and they cut some barley. They sift it, they prepare an isaron, and then they bring the carbon the first day of Chol HaMoed. So says the Mishnah, Rabbi Shmuel Omer hayaba b'Shabbos mishalosh si'in ubachol mechamesh. Very interesting. He says like this, there was a difference between, what if the first day of Chol HaMoed was Shabbos? Now you bring the carbon Omer on Shabbos. It is Doicha Shabbos, but says Rav Shimon, I think that there's a slight difference, and that is, the average year, if it's Chol HaMoed, exclusively Chol HaMoed, you take 5 sa of barley and grind it to get to 1 isaron. But if it's Shabbos, just 3 sa. And it's you'll have to get it from a smaller quantity. Now the Gemara is going to point out a strange thing, which is, I don't understand. If you need 5, to get to one isaron properly. If that's the type of flour you need, then there should be no difference in Shabbos and Yom Tov. And if 3 suffices, then there should be no difference between Shabbos and Chol Hamoed. The Gemara is going to analyze that. Comes the Mishnah, the Chachamim Oimrim no, Echad Shabbos ve'Echad Chol Mishalosh Haiva. They say, which is what I said, you don't need 5. You can get it from 3, so there's no difference between Chol Hamoed regular and Chol Hamoed Shabbos. Take 3 saw of barley, grind it down and sift it until you get to 1 Nisara. Now also, on Shabbos, the barley was reaped by one person, with 1 sickle, in 1 basket. By the way, it makes sense. How much people do you need to cut barley, whatever? And on the weekday, it was done with 3. Now, why was it different? So Rashi points out, the Gemara is going to describe this. One of the major machloksim between the Chachamim and the Baisusim or the Tzedukim was, when was this mitzvah done? So it says Machras HaShabbos. Chazal interpret Machras HaShabbos. The Shabbos is a reference to the first day of Pesach. Machras HaShabbos is the first day of Chol Hamoed. So they always did it the first day of Chol Hamoed. The Tzedukim, who didn't have a Teresh Shval Peh, they say Machras HaShabbos is Sunday. So it's the Sunday after Pesach, which could be the 4th day of Chol Hamoed. So there was always going to be that discrepancy. So in order to publicize that the Baisusim are wrong, they want 3 people to be involved, to be mafarsim it. Now 3 people involved to be Mechal Shabbos, no. But 3 people, fine. And the Chacham say no. Echad b'Shabbos ve'echad b'chol, b'shloisha, b'shalosh kupas, b'shalosh magal. Chacham say no. Even on Shabbos, 3 people to do it, the Gemara will analyze why. Now, just to finish up the daf, the Gemara is going to have the question that I pointed out before, which is, how much barley was needed to get to 1 isaron? So the Chachamim say, both on Shabbos and the weekday, all you need is 3 isaron. Dad, before we leave, you got to tell them to open the door and to go outside, because it's bothering me, and I don't want the shul to smell like cigarettes. Yeah, because I don't even know if they're going outside. They used to go outside, but they have to go further outside. I can't. It's 3 sickles. So the Gemara says like this: the Chachamim Shita is pretty consistent. They believe that 3 is enough. They believe that 3 is enough to get 1 isaron. So if 3 is enough to get to 1 isaron, there's no difference between Shabbos and Chol Hamoed. What's strange is the Shitas Rabbi Shmuel, that on Shabbos all you need is 3. But a Chol Hamoed, regular Chol Hamoed, you need 5. I understand. Says the Gemara, Bishlam Rabbanon Savri Yisar Muvcha Mishloisha Sayinasi. The Chachamim say that 3 is enough to get to 1 Yisaron. Loshna b'chov Loshna b'Shabbos. It makes no difference whether it's brought on Shabbos or a weekday. El Rabbi Shmuel. The problem is Rabbi Shmuel. My Kasavar. What is Rabbi Shmuel Shita based on? If Rabbi Shmuel Shita is that you really need 5 se'in of barley to get to 1 Yisaron, then that should be true on Shabbos as well. And and if 3 is enough, then why do you need more during the Chol Hamoed? What's going on? So the Gemara answers and we'll end with this. Amar Rava, Kasav Rabbi Shmuel Yisar Muvchar B'Loi Tircha Asi Mechamesh. Here's the deal. To get an Isaron easily, 5. You can get it out of 3 if you sift hard enough. So on the weekday, might as well make your life easier, get 5. But on Shabbos, you have a choice. Okay? To get to 1, I have 2 choices in front of me. I could either cut 5 or cut 3 and work harder sifting. Now both involve a malacha. Sifting is a malacha, but cutting is multiple malachas. Because when you cut more barley, you're reaping, you're winnowing, you're being boirer, all these things. I'd rather do more boirer than more of multiple malachas. Kaitzer and True. Merakid. It's a Talmud Boirer. But the point is, I'd rather do more Merakid than multiple malachas. So I'd rather do more of one malacha than multiple. So I'll get to the same conclusion with 3. I have to do more Merakid than 5, which is multiple malachas. The Gemara says, it's better to do more Merakid, which is one malacha, than to do multiple malachas. All right, we'll stop here because the Gemara is a hemshech that'll go into tomorrow's daf.